Senator McGuire, sorry about that.
That's all good. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon, members. Grateful to be here. I want to first start out by saying thank you to the chair and committee staff for the thorough work on this measure. Californians have come to expect when there is a disruption of a utility service that they are going to be informed when the service is going to be restored. If the electricity goes out in our homes, we expect that we're going to be informed when it's going to go back on. Or a gas line has a major leak in hundreds of thousands of homes whose service, or when the water stops flowing to our house or business, or the sewer system has a major disruption. The utility operator will let their customers know three things. Number one, that there's an outage. Number two, that crews are responding. And number three, within a few hours of the initial incident happening, the utility provider will give their customers a range of time when they can expect service to be restored. In fact, I think this is a core responsibility of providing service. It's just how the system works. There's a basic level of communication that must occur between the utility company and the customer base and local government. However, this is not the case when there is an outage of the 911 emergency call system in rural California. Currently, when the system goes down, by the way, it's the vast majority of California, there is no communication. Over the last 3 years, residents on the North Coast between the Golden Gate Bridge and the Oregon border have experienced 5 significant telecommunication outages that have wreaked havoc on those communities, and hundreds of thousands of residents' safety were put at risk unnecessarily. Since being in office, I have personally informed the California Office of Emergency Services, including the director directly, of 3 of these outages, and had to be the go-between between state and local emergency officials, along with the leading telecommunication provider of the area. In 2 instances, and I'm grateful for this, by the way, I had to contact the Vice President of Legislative Affairs for AT&T because there were 0 communications happening with the impacted counties about the outages. And I do want to say thank you to the Vice President. We've been able to bond over this for his communication during these really trying times. Members, and I will say the Vice President of Legislative Affairs for AT&T has a very important role, and he does his job really well. However, that role should not be to communicate potentially life-threatening questions and answers with a lowly state senator. The only call that should take place in these situations is from the telecommunication provider to the Office of Emergency Services. That's it. So there were 5 outages. In August of 2014, a semi-truck took over a half-mile of fiber line overhead from Highway 101 that disrupted over 200,000 communications connections in Mendocino, Northern Sonoma, Del Norte, and Trinity counties. September of 2015, there was a fiber cut by vandals. All in 911 was down. Hospitals could not do elective surgery. They could not access electronic medical records. ATM machines were down. The Coast Guard had a patrol for 24 hours straight between the Oregon border and the Sonoma coast because they have a federal mandate to be able to patrol the coast. That cost taxpayers $250,000. In 2015 of December, Humboldt, Caltrans put a backhoe through another fiber line. 911 was down. The jail phone systems did not work internally. Courts had to shut down. Businesses had to shut down. December of 2015, a smaller outage in Lake County, and in 16, there was a significant storm outage. And there is also a consistent. There was no communication. And in fact, if you don't mind, Mr. Chair, the only communication that we had was my Twitter feed. Every newspaper, every television.
Try to speak in the mic.
Okay. Every newspaper, every television station, and the vast majority of radio stations went out. The only thing we had was my Twitter feed. So, as we had to put out, fiber cable has been cut, impacting Mendocino and Humboldt counties, affecting landline and wireless service. This includes 911 service. So this is in September. This is later in the day when we did not see restoration. Again, no estimated time for service. A total of 7 911 call centers have been impacted throughout the North Coast. And by the way, no direct communication with any of those call centers. And then in December, Office of Emergency Services assessing extent of outage, we're getting in touch with AT&T. I cannot stress enough, there was no communication because entire data lines were down. In each of these cases, local emergency officials and neighbors had no idea why the service was down, no idea if the utility provider was responding, or if the service would be restored. And by the way, none of these outages were the fault of the utility, and I want to stress that. None of the outages were the fault of the utility, but the utility does have the responsibility to pick up the phone to communicate the situation. All residents want when they call 911 is for the 911 call center to pick up and for an ambulance, a police officer, or a fire engine to be able to respond. And that's why we've introduced Senate Bill 1250, the 911 Emergency Reliability and Public Safety Act. Here is how reporting of 911 outages currently work in California. Currently, rural and some suburban telecommunication outages do not meet the Federal Communication Commission reporting thresholds. The FCC requires outages that last 30 minutes and has the potential to affect 900,000 user minutes to be reported. 900,000 user minutes is equivalent to the city of San Francisco. So that would mean 800,000 in population having a landline or cell phone outage for a little over a minute. And that would trigger the federal threshold. The first problem with the federal threshold is that the FCC set this standard on a nationwide basis. It's a one-size-fits-all approach. They did not take into account rural areas in this nation. And in California, in fact, over 95% of our state is considered rural. And as the committee report highlights, it seems reasonable that these customers in rural areas who experience outages should have the same service and recovery as urban areas. And I have one more visual, Mr. Chair, and this is a map that was drafted by the PUC to be able to show which areas are covered and which aren't. Everything that you see in red right here are covered under the FCC threshold. Everything in green is not. This is by the Public Utilities Commission. So everything in green.
Is that green or yellow?
Hey, hi Dan. I'm going to go yellow because of the tie. My goodness. And so there's a challenge. If you don't live in a major urban area, you may not be able to understand if there's a 911 outage. Currently, when there is a 911 outage, telecommunication companies are not required to provide real-time information on the outage because they're a federally governed utility. The California Office of Emergency Services has informed us that a notification to their office is voluntary and sporadic at best from the FCC. And the PUC has also told us that they received these reports after they've been sent to the FCC and after the outage has been restored, sometimes weeks after. And this is why Senate Bill 1250 develops a statewide reporting outage. At the time of the outage, providing updates to emergency officials, and this bill establishes outage reports, which the state would use and monitor to ensure public safety, reliability, and the quality services provided by all telephone corporations. Since last year, and I'm grateful for this, I've worked with several from the telecom industry to get this bill right. And in fact, I will tell you I had a bill last year, and it was not ready. It was not cooked. And in fact, I held that bill last year to continue to work with telecom and cable to be able to get it right. And regarding this bill that we have here now, ladies and gentlemen, in good faith, I have taken 5 amendments from AT&T over the last 2 months. And I've asked others to be able to provide us amendments. We did get amendments between 4:30 and 5 o'clock yesterday from one provider, and some simply did not provide us any amendments. And I would like to be clear. In good faith, we took every single amendment that was offered to us, every single one. Better pairing our 120-minute reporting requirement with the existing FCC requirements and language regarding what information is made public. After introduction, we took the amendments to have Cal OES contact the county so that there's only one point of call and entry to ease the burden. We removed language in the final report that included financial impacts or resulted from the outage. And we also deleted, and this is the big gorilla, we also deleted language telecom and cable considered to be ambiguous and, quote, a potential for the PUC to regulate VoIP and IP. And that battle, as we know, if you were here during the days of Mr. Padilla, was a challenging bill. And there was concern that this bill would reopen that discussion. We took that amendment. Nonetheless, you will likely hear from cable companies that this bill is an attempt to regulate VoIP and IP. Nothing in this bill will allow the PUC to regulate VoIP or IP. Cable stated to us that the public safety answering points could be the point of contact for reporting 911 outages. That's essentially the sheriff's 911 call center or CHP. You're going to hear from the sheriff in Mendocino, they don't receive those phone calls. They don't. We checked with both the PUC and OES, who expressed serious concern about such an approach, contacting the PSAPs. You likely hear that they already report to the FCC, and that's true. However, they don't report rural outages, and that's definitely, they do not report to Cal OES reports from the FCC. Again, they arrive after the fact of service restoration. Service providers in California currently do not report VoIP outages to the CPUC, although they are supposed to report these outages to the FCC. This is a serious issue, especially considering that telecom provides a service that allows an individual to connect to 911, and yet they don't believe they should be subject to a reporting bill that is aimed at protecting lives in rural California. Rural needs the same standards as urban. This is important, as we know, and the number of VoIP California consumers continue to increase due to the adoption of newer technologies. So SB 1250 does three things. Number one, make a phone call to the California Office of Emergency Services and PUC regarding the 911 system of outage. The outage has to be 30 minutes or longer in duration and have the potential to affect 75,000 user minutes. Number two, Cal OES and the PUC would be provided a detailed report within 120 minutes of the outage taking place. So those are the only 2 points of contact, 30 minutes after an outage is established and a 120-minute update. Number three, it provides a detailed summary of the outages to Cal OES and the PUC within 20 days about what steps are being taken to avoid similar outages in the future. Having carriers contact Cal OES so that they can provide the county an update by the satellite phone of the general location and its duration will provide county emergency officials the critical information about the communication outage. Finally, we'll just list some of the challenges that we had during 2014, because it was during the Lodge Fire. The Lodge Fire burned over 120,000 acres in Mendocino County. There were 4 actual life-threatening medical emergencies that could not be responded to because 911 was down. 14 residents in the area of Laytonville who were potentially threatened by the Lodge Complex fire lost their ability to receive status updates on the fire through any form of communication, texting, placing a phone call, landline, and/or cell, using internet service. They could not communicate. And it got so bad, the county of Mendocino, the director of emergency services for the county, had to drive to the command post, which was an hour away from Ukiah, simply to communicate the challenges that they were having on the ground with communication with the command posts of the Lodge Fire. I have more and be happy to go into some of the challenges that we see on the North Coast, but I'm just going to close as we're getting late. This is a critical public safety issue, and I will tell you this. I want to work with industry. I do, but it has to be a two-way street. I get that there are concerns with the Public Utilities Commission on establishing a new threshold and fines. I get it. But the current scenario where there is no communication with state and local emergency officials when 911 goes dark simply does not work. SB 1250 is supported by the state sheriffs, police chiefs, fire districts, American Heart Association, Consumer Federation, RCRC, and more. And would be grateful to have an aye vote today for your consideration. Mr. Chair, we have Tammy Bartolome. She's the Emergency Services Director for the Mendocino County Sheriff's Office. We also have Sheriff Allman here today, who I appreciate, who flew up from Irvine to be here from the County of Mendocino. And we're also grateful that we have Regina Costa, the Telecommunications Policy Director for TURN. Please.
This has been quite an exhaustive presentation in terms of information-wise, and I think you did a good job of presenting your claim. If there's additional information that wasn't stated by the senator that you believe is important, the committee should know, please, we'd like to hear your comments. Thank you.
Thank you. As Senator McGuire said, my name is Tammy Bartlome, and I am the Emergency Services Coordinator for the County of Mendocino with the Sheriff's Office. Today I'm here on behalf of Mendocino County Emergency Services in support of Senate Bill 1250. Our Board of Supervisors also sent a letter of support. Currently, due to our low population density and high federal reporting thresholds, there is no requirement that a carrier notify the local or state Office of Emergency Services when a loss of 911 services occurs. This lack of simple notification is unacceptable, as life safety is our highest priority. On September 3rd, 2015, the County of Mendocino experienced a disastrous telecommunications failure, the second such event in the last 16 months. The outage highlighted the public safety threat posed by a single point of failure in network infrastructure and the resulting economic and social impacts to our communities. On September 3rd at 9:55 a.m., it was brought to my attention by our communications specialist there was a communications failure, and this failure included our 911 system. The only communication available to emergency personnel was through the county's public safety radio system. We immediately moved to response mode and activated our Emergency Operations Center. The California Office of Emergency Services Operational Area Satellite Information System, or OASIS as we know it, communication system was activated, along with a portable radio communication system and satellite phones at each of our Sheriff's Office satellite stations. The Mendocino County Amateur Radio Communication Service was activated and deployed to our Emergency Operations Center and to our local hospitals because that was the only way we had to communicate at the time. The Sheriff's Office, Willits, and Ukiah Police Department PSAPs all switched their 911 communication systems to our backup dispatching location, CAL FIRE's Howard Forest Emergency Command Center. Because Howard Forest normally only receives dispatch calls from fire and emergency medical service, it was necessary for the county law enforcement dispatch centers to deploy dispatchers to handle the additional calls. This was very difficult since there was no phone and no way to communicate. They had to self-dispatch. An incident command post for California Highway Patrol and Caltrans was established at Howard Forest. Although rerouting of the 911 system occurred quickly, many people could not call 911 or receive our reverse 911 information calls because service was out. At the Emergency Operations Center, our communication specialists, through county-owned public safety radio system, notified the local fire departments. The public would be instructed to go to their local fire department in the event of emergency. This meant no ambulance was going to come to their door. This meant they had to drive themselves to a local fire department to receive medical services. And for many of our citizens in Mendocino County, they're homebound. How are they going to get there?
We're going to have to wrap it up.
Okay.
So if you want to just hit any other specific points in regards to what you saw.
One of the other critical, we work with the National Weather Service. They send out our emergency alert notifications. We found out that many of the radio stations could not receive the information because they did not have phone or fax. So the information, we preach to our citizens to listen to their local radio station for current information. There was none going out. We may have had timely response and we may have handled the situation timely, but this could have saved a lot of time and money if we could have, in fact, when we called the warning center, the California State Warning Center, and notified them of the outage, if they could have given us information immediately on what was going on, we could have avoided sending an officer out to find where the cut was, what was going on. Our AT&T rep, who is supposed to communicate with us, sent me a text and an email. I had no cell phone service. I did not receive that information for 7 hours. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'll be very brief. My name is Tom Altman. I'm serving my 10th year as sheriff of Mendocino County, and I'm very honored to do so. The 911 outage, I'm certainly not going to blame on the utilities, but the lack of notification, certainly the fault lies in their hands. 40% of the phones in Mendocino County are cellular. Our landlines are slowly going away, and rural communities are going to wireless. And as Tammy said, the ability to send out a reverse 911 to let you know your phone doesn't work really doesn't work because if reverse 911 doesn't work. So what we're asking for on the 1250, and I certainly appreciate the senator's bill on this and support, we're asking for a 30-minute notification so we can notify our local radio stations, we can get the word out. I can send my deputies to very remote areas where they can do high-profile patrol, so if there is a fire emergency, medical emergency, law enforcement emergency, our deputies who with their radio will be notified. We've somewhat taken care of somewhat a situation. We've purchased 5 satellite phones and we've deployed them throughout our county, but I'm certainly asking for your support on Senate Bill 1250 to help a rural county. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Thank you. My name is Regina Costa. I'm the policy director for TURN. I want to make 4 points. First, that this bill complements and supports the work that the FCC is undertaking to ensure network reliability and 911 service is reliable. It does not detract from it. The FCC itself has acknowledged, and I'm quoting, there's a shared authority of the federal government and states to collectively oversee all components of 911 service. These roles are not mutually exclusive. They leave room for states and localities to take action within their jurisdictions based on the unique circumstances and needs of their constituents. We also rely on state and local oversight to ensure that our combined governance covers every link in the chain of 911 service nationwide. And the FCC has said, and the PUC has said, that an integral link in that chain involves network outages that don't just affect a 911 center, but have a widespread effect on the residents and businesses in an area. If the network is out in your community, that means you can't call 911, and the FCC has said that is a vital part of this chain. The second point is that the recording that would be required under SB 1250 is not redundant, and it does not duplicate FCC requirements or the PUC reporting. The current FCC rules do require reporting of outages to 911, but those reports are tied to either the current 900,000 user minute threshold, which does not capture rural outages, or they are tied to specific switching and routing equipment that serves the public safety answering points. Okay, so the reporting that is required by providers, by the FCC, does not capture the information that is addressed under SB 1250. The second point with regard to that is the CPUC does receive outage data, but they receive it in the form of trouble tickets. And those trouble tickets come after the fact. They're compiled quarterly. They're reported annually. It's after the fact. It does not help the sheriff or the Office of Emergency Services know there is a major problem that people need to be aware of. Okay. The third thing on confidentiality, the CPUC has asked the FCC for access to its NORS database, and the FCC responded by proposing to give state regulators access to that information. Under SB 1250, the rules would be consistent with FCC requirements on confidentiality. Those rules are mainly in place for issues affecting Homeland Security. There is nothing affecting Homeland Security that would be involved by reporting to the Office of Emergency Services or the local sheriff that there's an outage with telephone service. So that issue really should not be.
Thank you, ma'am. I think all the points have been made. Did you want to make some additional points, ma'am?
I'll be really quick.
Okay.
My name is Nancy Biagini. I'm with Communication Workers of America, and I'm also a 39-year retired employee worker for AT&T. This is a serious issue. We strongly support the bill, and we respectfully urge an aye vote from the committee. Thank you.
Thank you. And if you could come forward, state your name and your position as you come forward to the mic.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Christy Baum on behalf of the California Professional Firefighters in support of the bill.
Chair and members, Jonathan Feldman with the California Police Chiefs Association in support.
Mr. Chair, Kathy Christian, representing Marin County, mostly rural, surprisingly, also in support of the bill. Thank you.
Callie Hampton on behalf of the American Heart and American Stroke Association in support.
Once again, Paul Smith, Rural Counties Association, in strong support of the bill.
Mike Nichols, Access Sonoma Broadband, strongly in support of the bill, and we thank the Senator for bringing the bill forward. Thank you.
Trish Steele, Broadband Alliance of Mendocino County, North Bay North Coast Broadband Consortium, and strongly supported this bill.
Diane Simmons, rural resident with the Broadband Alliance of Mendocino in support. I also today represent the Round Valley Indian Health Center, serving 3,500 rural residents in support of the bill, and also Suzanne Norgard, CEO, Katie Gibbs, President of the Board of the Community Foundation of Mendocino in support.
Mr. Chair, Russell Nowak on behalf of the California Fire Chiefs Association and the Fire Districts Associations of California in strong support. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Frank Bell, General Manager of the Sea Ranch Association, large-scale homeowners association on the north coast of Sonoma County, 50 miles to the nearest traffic light. We own and operate, we're in the development stage of owning and operating our own telecommunications network to solve some of our isolation problems, and we are strongly in support of this bill. We appreciate you.
Ignacio Hernandez on behalf of the Consumer Federation of California in support of the bill.
Do we have speakers in opposition?
Mr. Chairman and members, Carolyn McIntyre on behalf of the California Cable and Telecommunications Association in opposition to the bill. First, let me start by simply responding very briefly to the senator's comments that the amendments to the bill did in fact remove the CPUC jurisdiction that we are all concerned about. We continue to be concerned about it. I simply direct you to pages 2 and 3 of the committee analysis, which will highlight the many areas where this bill does in fact give the CPUC authority. I also am very sympathetic to the issues and the arguments that have been brought forth here today with regards to the need for the bill. But I would say that that discussion is in fact void of the fact that the FCC, Federal Communications Commission, actually issued an order in December of 2013 requiring those providers of service, whether it's a telephone service or a voice over IP service, who provides a connection to a public safety answering point, to notify the public safety answering point of any outage within 30 minutes of discovery. And there is no threshold, there's no minute threshold. It's not the same report that the senator described as being inadequate. It is an immediate notification with regards to any connection to a public safety answering point that is not functioning for whatever reason. It does not require a broader reporting threshold. It simply goes to the point that actually has responsibility for being able to communicate out, and we believe through mechanisms made available either by FEMA or by the Emergency Alert Network to let consumers know that there is in fact an outage. Unfortunately, there's nothing in SB 1250 that would provide the notification any sooner than what the FCC has already put in place. In fact, I would argue that given the thresholds in SB 1250, the notification requirements are not even as strong as those that are currently in place and required by the FCC. FCC's reporting threshold has no minute requirement, no customer impact requirement. There is no distinction between rural and urban. It is simply a requirement that is imposed on outages of 911 service being provided by an entity connecting to a public safety answering point. I would also note that from an implementation standpoint, this bill would actually be quite confusing given the thresholds established in the bill. It does, in fact, refer to the United States Census Bureau's definition of a rural community is where the applicability of this bill is supposed to be. I've spent quite a bit of time over the last few days looking for a specific definition of a rural community, and basically a rural community is not an urban community. And there are various components that fit into whether or not a community is going to be considered a rural or urban community. It is not as simple as population. So to the extent that reporting requirements are going to be placed upon us that in fact have some sort of a threshold, we should at least be able to determine what that threshold truly is. The bill also requires us to provide certain reporting information to the Public Utilities Commission. We are concerned about the PUC maintaining that information as confidential. The bill explicitly states that this information may be submitted under confidentiality, but it will be up to the CPUC to determine what of that information should in fact be made public. So while we are sympathetic to the problem, we do not believe that this bill does anything to assist in providing faster notification to the community, to the extent the notification did not take place, that as the senator described. I can't speak to why that didn't happen, but I can say there are FCC rules in place that do in fact require that type of notification today. For those reasons, we're opposed to the bill and request your no vote.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Rudy Reyes for Verizon. Let me first start out by saying that we are opposed unless amended, and that I will disclose that we were the provider that did provide an alternative to the senator that we believe will achieve the goal which we share, which is to increase awareness and notification during outages without kicking it over to the PUC and creating a big new proceeding that's going to make a bunch of rules. Let me focus a little bit on the FCC threshold, because I think there's a bit of confusion here. Ms. McIntyre was talking about 911 outages. What I want to focus on is regular consumer outages when your voice service goes out. There, the FCC standard was, contrary to the author's statement, it is a standard that incorporates both urban and rural areas expressly. And the FCC, in adopting the 900,000 user minute threshold, found that it was appropriate for rural areas. It is not, the 900,000 user minutes might be a little confusing, but it's not based on population. It is equation. So you take the number of potentially affected users, you multiply that by the duration of the outage, and then you get to the user minutes. So for a county like Mendocino, which has around 90,000 people, let's just assume that that is the number of potentially affected customers. It would take 10 minutes for that to become reportable under the FCC standard. For a place like Healdsburg, which has approximately 12,000 people, you would get there in 75 minutes. And so my point is that the FCC has determined that that standard is appropriate all across America, including in rural areas. They're also, the FCC is currently looking at that standard to see if there's an additional geographic-based standard that they can apply that doesn't have anything to do with user minutes that would increase awareness during outages. So I will close by saying that we are committed to continuing to work with the author to find a solution that will not open a big new PUC proceeding with the potential to regulate wireless and VoIP, but will achieve the goal of increasing notification during outages. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I have the privilege of being the vice president who bonded with Senator McGuire, and I'm thrilled we had that chance to work together. The senator has been very forthcoming and very open in our conversations, and we have attempted over a number of months to work with his office to find a solution to this problem, because clearly there is local concern about how to fix this problem. I also appreciate the fact that the senator highlighted the fact that in each instance that we spoke about, Every outage had nothing to do with any of the companies or specifically with AT&T. These outages were a result of vandalism, an illegal truck, and a Caltrans backhoe. So these are incidents that occur that create significant outages that have nothing to do with the reliability or the way we manage our networks, and I think that's an important distinction. In each instance, these repairs were, once they were identified, were implemented immediately. In 2 instances, the repairs occurred in less than 24 hours, and in 1 instance, it took 45 hours to repair because the truck took out 2.5 miles of fiber optic cable. It was an illegal truck. In one of the instances, we even went to the trouble of putting a $25,000 reward out to try to find the perpetrator of the vandalism. Our concern, well, let me start with this. We support the goal of better, closer, faster public safety and first responder communications. I don't think there's any dispute we want to do a better job in that arena. However, we do think creating an added and a larger bureaucracy to oversee the process will be inefficient and ineffective at getting to the key problems that many of the local residents who are here today have complained about. But we have made a commitment to work with the senator throughout this process, and we hope to find some solution that gets directly to the people that are impacted and not create an added bureaucracy either through the PUC or any other mechanism. At this point, we oppose unless amended. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Do we have any more people to speak in opposition?
Afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Brenda Coleman here with Sprint. Also regrettably opposed to SB 1250 and just wish to basically align ourselves with the comments already made by the previous 3 witnesses. We look forward to working with Senator McGuire and his staff and hope to come to some sort of resolution. Obviously, the goals and the intent of the bill are quite laudable, so hopefully we can work with him to come to some formidable resolution. Thank you.
Mr. Chair and members, Steve Carlson, CTIA, the Wireless Industry Association, on behalf of a coalition of wireless companies, broadband companies, and landline companies. I don't want to repeat what we said, what was said before. We obviously understand that this is an issue that's of great concern to Mr. McGuire, Senator McGuire, and his district, and we'd like to do everything we can without creating the kind of bureaucracy and the kind of sort of overarching problem and administrative circumstances that unfortunately we think this bill would do. I want to make a point about wireless industry and 911. Wireless industry is public safety of our customers is our #1 priority. Wireless provides well over 70% of all 911 calls, and our activity, not mandated activity, but what we do in working with PSAPs and working with public safety, I don't think it can be overstated how not only important that is, but I think how well we work with them. So I want to make sure that, and I don't think it was the senator's intention to sort of suggest that that wasn't the case, but I just wanted to point out that it is a hugely important issue for our companies, and we think we do a pretty good job with it.
Pam Loomis on behalf of Consolidated Communications, also an opposed unless amended, where we definitely appreciate the public safety concerns of the communities that are affected by outages and would like to continue to work with the author on finding a solution that doesn't create a huge regulatory process.
Very well. Do we have any committee questions, comments, concerns?
If I could, Mr. Chair, and thank you, and I'll be brief. And I just wanted to say, I talked with Senator McGuire a year ago on this bill and agreed to co-author it because I could see the need. I could see the problems and certainly the maps and the descriptions, and hearing it from the testimony of the witnesses in support really indicates that there is a need for a solution and a notification when we have those outages in those rural areas. And it's interesting because the opposition, certainly from the telecoms and the industry and the cable, is certainly related to not wanting to deal with the PUC. And I can certainly understand that very much. However, everybody goes back to SB 1161, so using that as kind of the Bible or the gospel, when in reality, it's just a bill that we passed, and we can change that, and we can amend it, we can make all kinds of changes to that and put this right back into VoIP into the PUC. It's not something written in stone and something, but I'm not testing or saying that we should do that and don't want to do that. But I do think that there can be a solution, whether it's OES without the PUC and something. And I just want to say that I know you've worked hard on it, and I know the opposition has worked to try to come together, and I know the amendments that you've taken. But what I'd like to see is that you really, this is going to appropriations, if it gets out of here.
Correct.
And in the next few months, to come up with an opportunity, and hopefully that the opposition will, as they've shared, that they see the problem and want to find a solution too. So I think you can get there, and I would be happy to move the bill at the appropriate time, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Senator Morrell?
Yes. Senator McGuire, thank you. You did an excellent job, clearly communicated many things. A couple of things. My staff, we, on our part, they weren't able to get that amendments that you got yesterday, so I'd like to look at some of those. But we have been in contact with your office this morning because we want to work with you on this. So I'm just going to hold off, but I like most of this, but I need further clarify my thinking and make sure the bugs get worked out. But thank you. Good job. Good job.
Senator Kurtzberg?
Yeah, I just want to echo those comments, Senator Morrell, and you did a great job, and I've been listening to your frustrations in the communities you represent are so different than the ones that I represent. I couldn't imagine meeting the challenges that you do and how difficult it is. I'm going to vote for this today, but I do have similar, I just wish we could keep bills in committees and mark them up and really work it and cook it, but unfortunately we got to move things along. But I think that there's good faith among all the folks involved in this. We have a real significant problem, and you look at that map of the 164,000 square miles of California, it looks about 95% of it is rural, right? And folks that live in rural areas, make choices to live under very different circumstances where the lights go out for days and they figure out ways around it. So I'm supported, but I appreciate your willingness to work with all the folks on this for today. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Very well. We have a motion by Senator Hill to approve the bill, do pass to appropriations. Clerk, please call the roll.
Hueso.
Aye.
Hueso, aye. Morrell. Canella.
Aye.
Canella, aye. Gaines. Hertzberg.
Aye.
Hertzberg, aye. Hill.
Aye.
Hill, aye. Laura. Leyva.
Aye.
Leyva, aye. McGuire.
Aye.
McGuire, aye. Pavley. Aye. Pavley, aye. Wolf. 7-0.
That vote gets 7 votes. It's enough to get it out. We will close the roll on that. All the bills are out. Thank you to the public for your patience. We are now adjourned.